Disclaimer. This video contains intense and frightening content meant for entertainment purposes. It may include scenes that some viewers may find disturbing or unsettling. We recommend viewer discretion, especially for those sensitive to horror themes or with underlying medical conditions that could be affected by intense content. The events portrayed in this video are entirely fictional, and any resemblance to real-life situations or individuals is coincidental. We do not endorse harmful or illegal activities. By continuing to watch, you acknowledge the content warning and proceed at your own discretion.
Story 1, Flickering Shadows. The day had been oppressively hot, and my friends and I were looking for a reprieve from the scorching sun. We decided to seek refuge in the dilapidated old cinema at the edge of town, a place rumored to be haunted, but also known for its icy air conditioning. Little did we know that this decision would plunge us into a night of terror we would never forget. As we entered the cinema, the cool air enveloped us, offering sweet relief from the blistering heat outside. The lobby was dimly lit, and the worn-out red carpet seemed to absorb any sound, creating an eerie hush. The ticket seller, an elderly woman with a distant look in her eyes, handed us our tickets without a word, her hand trembling as she did so. With our snacks in hand, we made our way to the screening room, passing dusty movie posters from decades past. The whole place had a timeless, forgotten feel, as if it existed in a world of its own. The screening room was small, with rows of tattered velvet seats facing a faded silver screen. The air inside was even colder than the lobby, sending a shiver down my spine. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation as the lights dimmed and the movie began. At first, everything seemed normal. The film played without any glitches, and we settled in, enjoying the classic horror flick we had chosen. But as the story on the screen grew darker, strange occurrences in the theater drew our attention away from the movie. I noticed the shadows in the corners of the room seemed to move on their own, shifting and dancing in the periphery of my vision. At first, I brushed it off as a trick of the old projector, but it soon became undeniable. The shadows were alive, twisting and contorting into grotesque shapes that seemed to mimic the horrors on the screen. As I glanced at my friends, their faces mirrored my own growing unease. They too had noticed the strange phenomenon. We decided to investigate, leaving our seats and cautiously making our way toward the back of the theater. The shadows seemed to grow thicker the closer we got to the projector room. We could hear the faint sound of old film reels spinning, and a chilling draft sent a shudder through us. With trembling hands, I pushed open the door to the projector room. Inside, the room was freezing cold, even colder than the rest of the theater. The old projector, a relic from another era, was running on its own, casting flickering light and shadows across the room. But what caught our attention most was a ghostly figure standing by the projector. The figure was dressed in a tattered vintage usher's uniform, complete with a bow tie and a peaked cap. His eyes were hollow, and his spectral form seemed to waver in and out of existence. We were paralyzed with fear as he turned to face us, and a cold voice whispered from his pale lips, "You shouldn't be here." With that, the figure dissolved into thin air, leaving us trembling and breathless. We rushed out of the room and back into the screening room, where the shadows had returned to their normal, stationary state. The movie was reaching its climax, but we couldn't focus on it anymore. We grabbed our belongings and fled the cinema, leaving behind the chilling cold and the haunted memories. To this day, I can't explain what we witnessed in that haunted cinema. Was it the spirit of a long-dead usher, forever trapped in the projection room? Or was it something more sinister, a malevolent force that fed on the fear of those who dared to enter? All I know is that we escaped that place, vowing never to return, and the memories of that night still haunt my dreams, reminding me that some mysteries are better left unsolved. Story 2, The Haunting Matinee. I had always been drawn to old, forgotten places, so when I heard about an abandoned cinema on the outskirts of town, my curiosity got the best of me. It was said to be haunted, of course, like any place with a history as rich and dusty as this one. But I didn't believe in ghosts. I was just looking for a little adventure. The cinema stood like a time capsule from a bygone era. Its marquee, once bright with the names of classic films, was now faded and weathered. The poster frames outside were empty, their glass shattered long ago. It was a place forgotten by time and the townsfolk, except for the stories that had turned it into a local legend. With a flashlight in hand, I pushed open the creaking double doors and stepped into the lobby. The air was heavy with the scent of must and decay. Tattered red curtains hung from the walls, and the remnants of a concession stand lay strewn across the cracked tiles. The ticket booth was empty, its glass long shattered, and the tickets lay in disarray, as if someone had hurriedly abandoned their post. I chuckled at the thought of the teenage ticket seller, spooked by a gust of wind or a creaking floorboard, fleeing the place never to return. I wandered deeper into the cinema, my footsteps echoing through the dimly lit corridors. The main screening room was colossal, rows upon rows of velvet seats facing a massive silver screen. The air inside was unnaturally cold, even for an abandoned building. Ignoring the eerie chill, I climbed the stairs to the back row and shone my flashlight across the empty seats. I couldn't help but think of the countless moviegoers who had once filled these seats with laughter and tears. It was a haunting reminder of the passage of time. I decided to explore the projection room next, curious about the machinery that had once brought films to life on the silver screen. As I climbed the narrow staircase to the upper level, the sound of my own breath seemed to reverberate, filling the space with an eerie rhythm. The projection room was small and cramped, dominated by a hulking projector that looked as ancient as the cinema itself. Dusty film reels lined the shelves, and the walls were covered in faded movie posters. But what caught my eye was a stack of old film canisters in the corner. Curiosity piqued, I grabbed one of the canisters and pried it open. Inside was a reel of film, its images captured in flickering black and white. The title read, "The Matinee of the Damned." It was a film I had never heard of, and I couldn't resist the urge to thread it through the projector and see what secrets it held. As the first frames flickered to life on the screen, I was transported to a different era. The film was a silent one, and the grainy images depicted a packed cinema from decades past. The audience was enthralled, their eyes fixed on the screen, but there was something off about their expressions. They seemed trapped. As the film continued, I realized the horror unfolding before me. The audience in the film was unable to leave their seats, their faces frozen in a perpetual state of terror. Panic welled up inside me as I watched them scream silently, clawing at their seats as if trying to escape an invisible prison. I turned to shut off the projector, my heart pounding in my chest, but the room was no longer empty. A figure stood in the corner, dressed in the attire of a 1940s usher, complete with a red bow tie and a peaked cap. His face was obscured by shadow, but his presence was suffocating. In a voice that echoed through the room, he spoke, "You've awakened them." With that, the cinema around me seemed to come alive. The seats in the screening room were filled with ghostly apparitions, their eyes wide with fear, their spectral hands reaching out to me. I stumbled backward, desperate to escape the nightmare unfolding before me. As I fled the cinema, the haunting cries of the trapped audience echoed in my ears. I vowed never to return to that cursed place, haunted not by the ghosts of the past, but by the horrifying knowledge that some stories are best left untold, and some hauntings are better left undisturbed. Story 3: The Whispering Screens. The invitation arrived in a plain envelope, its contents written on a piece of aged parchment paper. It was an exclusive event, one that promised a unique cinematic experience in a long-forgotten cinema known as the Starlight Theatre. I had heard whispers about the place, the stories of its dark past, and the inexplicable occurrences within its walls, but I couldn't resist the allure of a secret screening. The night was chilly as I arrived at the Starlight Theatre. Its exterior was a faded relic of a bygone era, but there was an undeniable charm to its weathered facade. The marquee lights flickered erratically, casting eerie shadows on the cracked sidewalk. Inside, the lobby was adorned with vintage movie posters, their colors muted by time. A grand chandelier hung from the ceiling, its crystals catching the dim light. The ticket booth was manned by a peculiar figure, a woman with strikingly pale eyes that seemed to pierce through the darkness. She handed me a ticket without a word, her gaze unwavering. The screening room beckoned, and I made my way down a dimly lit corridor. The air was thick with anticipation as I entered the room. Rows of crimson velvet seats stretched out before me, their ornate designs a stark contrast to the decrepit surroundings. I chose a seat near the center, the anticipation building within me. As the lights dimmed and the screen came to life, I settled into my seat, ready for the unknown. The film was a silent masterpiece, its flickering images capturing the essence of a bygone era. The story was intriguing, a tale of love and loss set against a hauntingly beautiful backdrop. But as the minutes ticked by, I noticed something peculiar. Faint whispers seemed to emanate from the screen, barely audible but undeniably present. I dismissed them as a quirk of the old sound system, but they grew louder, more insistent. Glancing around, I saw that I wasn't the only one affected. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their expressions a mixture of confusion and unease. I leaned closer to the person next to me, asking if they heard the whispers too. Their eyes met mine, filled with terror, but they remained silent. The film took a sinister turn, the characters on screen descending into madness. The whispers grew louder, their words incomprehensible yet haunting. I felt a chill creep up my spine as the voices seemed to converge on a single chilling phrase. They are watching. Panic rippled through the audience, and people began to rise from their seats, desperate to escape the suffocating atmosphere. But the exits were sealed shut, and the theater itself seemed to resist their efforts to leave. I joined the frantic struggle, my heart pounding as I pulled at the doors, but they remained steadfastly closed. In the midst of the chaos, the woman from the ticket booth appeared at the front of the room, her pale eyes gleaming. She raised her hand, and the whispers grew into a deafening cacophony. The very walls of the theater seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. As I covered my ears, unable to bear the tormenting voices any longer, the screen itself began to change. The characters from the film emerged, their spectral forms stepping out of the screen and into the room. They moved among us, their eyes hollow and their expressions twisted with despair. The woman's voice rose above the turmoil, her words echoing through the theater. You've awakened them, and now they hunger for your souls. With that, the figures from the screen closed in, their icy fingers reaching out to touch us. The audience screamed in terror as they were enveloped by the ethereal specters. I felt a cold hand on my shoulder, and as I turned to face the specter, its hollow eyes met mine. In that instant, I understood the truth. The Starlight Theatre was a gateway to a realm of darkness, a place where the souls of the lost found refuge in the world of the living. I was trapped, and there was no escape. To this day, I am bound to the Starlight Theatre, a prisoner of the haunting whispers and the insatiable hunger of the spectral audience. If you ever receive an invitation to a secret screening at the Starlight, I implore you to resist the allure, for once you enter its cursed halls, there is no turning back, and you too will become a part of its terrifying legend.